when it came to the parking, one of the issues that we were concerned about was whether or not we were being inconsistent with whether or not the applicant's request was inconsistent with our general policy, which is, as you've seen in previous projects, this planning commission supports a general plan which says that generally communities should not be gated. What's different about this project and why we considered it differently and ultimately support the recommendation of the applicant that it have a gate is that this is a mixed use project. We have one kind of clear dividing lines between the commercial and the residential sections. However, and that's typically not the case. We usually see strictly a residential development. So when we have a commercial section, it is entirely possible, if there is not a gate in the back of Velardo, that the two uses, both the residential and the commercial, will have kind of commingled vehicles, and one will negatively impact the other and vice versa. And that is, if you have delivery vehicles coming in for the commercial area, they can park such that they block the residents from being able to get into their own garages, which is problematic. Also, customers or patrons wanting to visit the commercial area and park in the back, coming in off of Velardo, would restrict by the same token, they would restrict residences from being able to get into their garages, and they would restrict commercial vehicles coming into service the commercial businesses from being able to do so. We also noted anecdotally from all of our experiences from what we've seen and the nature of this being a downtown setting, that parking is available. Parking is a fungible commodity, and there are many places around to park. I personally would be a little bit surprised if people were to choose Velardo to park there to go into the commercial area. There are fields of parking, as was pointed out, the city's parking lot immediately south of this project, and on both sides of the street. There are many parking spaces available, and we don't really expect this to be that problematic, especially because when you have more commercial development, as we have along Palm Canyon, and as this would intensify, people will park once and walk to a number of businesses. You don't have to have the full number of parking spaces for each business, because that's not how it functions on a day-to-day basis. So that being said, we were comfortable with the supporting the applicant's request that the parking be gated on the back. The other thing that was brought out, I think by Mr. Hirschbein and by staff, is that the gate proposed for the back is set back 85 feet from Velardo, which is a far cry from the residential type applications where it's strictly residential, and the gate is really fronts right on the street, so that as you drive down the street, it appears that you have a gated community. Here you have a whole motor court in front of it, and it's graciously landscaped and has plenty of space, so that it does not have the same outward appearance of not being a connected part of the neighborhood or not being a connected part of the city surroundings. So that's what I have to report. If there are specific questions on other areas, I can offer my answers, and certainly the other members of the subcommittee can speak as well.
Are there comments from the other members?
I have just a quick comment. First of all, Commissioner Alain, that was a wonderful summary of the lengthy discussions that we had. Amazing, detailed summary. Thank you so much for that. The only thing I would add is that we did spend a little bit of time on making sure that the commercial along Palm Canyon was going to be viable from a design standpoint. And so we spent a little bit of time on pushing that 20-foot depth commercial to 30-foot depth.
And the heights, did you pay attention to those?
Well, we wanted to make sure that there was a substantial height or architectural sort of fixture at the corner of Chino and Palm Canyon. And we felt that the north end of the site coming southbound on Palm Canyon also deserved to be accentuated with some height. So I'll leave it to the applicant to talk about some of the kind of the lantern, the lighting issues, but they did accentuate the height of both of the ends of the property along Palm Canyon.
My question was more the height of the commercial spaces. I remember that.
Oh, yes. They, again, we wanted to be a minimum of 12 feet clear on the ground floor, and I think they've exceeded that by at least a foot, as I recall from the latest plans.
And do you know, I mean, that may be an applicant question. Perhaps Commissioner Hirschbein knows. I know that other applicants have told us they needed 16 feet for modern tenants.
Well, as was pointed out to us, well, first of all, two things. The space on the south corner and the space on the north corner is actually going to be 2 stories in height. There's no floor over those spaces. So they're going to have a very lovely high interior volume. But as was pointed out to us, and I came to understand, these developers are the ones that developed the, I think they call it the El Paseo building where workshop is. And they've alluded, or they've indicated that the type of retail that they're going to encourage to lease here are those type of stores. And because of the limited size of the store, depth, and overall square footage, and the type of the tenant, they're not going to require the kind of height that an H&M would have, or that a Limited would have, or I don't know, pick your modern retailer. They're all going away, so maybe I'm behind the times here. But those type of mall retailers do demand more clearance than is being provided here. But it was thought by the applicant and agreed to by the subcommittee that because of where this is, the type of retailer that they hope to attract, and the actual configuration being limited in depth and overall square footage, that the height was very appropriate for this development.
There is a member of the public who has their hand up. We have.
Well, are we still?
We're not in public hearing. I just wanted to let him know that we're not in the public hearing yet.
Chair, I had another question too. So did you guys, as a subcommittee, also have a discussion about the commercial parking as well?
Yeah, I did. I thought that as Commissioner Alain indicated, it's very unlikely that I'm going to be driving from someplace, either in my house or if I'm a tourist from a hotel, to go to a store in this development. It's going to be in the order of 2,000 square feet, 1,000 square feet. And I'm going to say, I'm going to park at the development. I'm going to park on Belardo, and then I'm going to walk about, I want to say about 500 feet down the length of Chino, turn the corner, and then go into that store. I don't think that's the likely scenario of the users of the on-site parking for the commercial. I think, as Commissioner Lane indicated, it's going to be more of a city experience where somebody parks someplace and goes to multiple doors up and down Palm Canyon Drive. Is that what you're talking about, Commissioner Irvin?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was talking about. It seems like you said, you have to walk down the street and around the corner to get to the front of the building. So I was just wondering if you guys kind of discussed that and talked about that, seeing if maybe some other parking around somewhere close by would have made a difference. But it sounds like you said you guys kind of discussed that and talked about it.
Yes.
We did have written public comment on that, where the public said that people actually do park on Belardo, but this will help that problem. Okay, I guess the other question for Commissioner Alain and the committee was the little park was one of the amenities of this. Can you explain the removal of the little park?
Yes, I certainly can. And as I was listening to others and continuing to look at the exhibit, I thought, oh, I should have addressed that. As Commissioner Miller reported, we thought it was important to have more weight, height, gravitas, both at the south end of the project and the north end of the project to anchor it and to give a pedestrian who is either coming from the north end or coming from the south end, because we really have a kind of a two distinct pedestrian zones or experiences on either side of it, to give them something to walk to or towards, and it gets them drawn towards it. A landscaped area does not do the same thing. If you are walking and shopping and in your urban experience, you're not going to be drawn towards some palm trees and shrubs in a small kind of garden area. By moving, nonetheless, it's good to have a variation in the front face, the front vertical face of a project of this size, and giving a recess in it where you have, as is shown, some vegetation is attractive, and it provides a bit of a relief and it provides a bit of interest. So we thought that was a good thing. It originally had been proposed to be a little bit narrower, and we wanted to make sure that it didn't feel confined or that it was a dark and scary place that you wouldn't want to walk past at night. So the applicant agreed to open it up and make it a little bit larger. And we discussed whether or not you would be able to, as a pedestrian, to walk from the street through that area and into the project, and the applicant can explain why they don't think that's appropriate, and I think we all agreed with them. The applicant said that this would be kind of a place to where you could be seated and wait for whoever you were shopping with, who was had greater endurance at the shopping event, to come meet with you. They don't picture it really as a place to eat. And the other thing that they did that's just beautiful, I hope they show the exhibits, is glassed in the north face of the southernmost building along there, so that as you're driving or walking southbound along Palm Canyon, you will see into the store, and also from the south, you'll be able to see the merchandise on display. You'll be able to see attractive colors, and they were talking about different ways that they can get their tenants to really engage the interior of the stores, provide a lot of glass so that when you look into it, you're immediately interested and drawn into the shopping experience there. So it's no longer kind of a park or little green spaces was originally intended. Where it is now, we think will really serve to engage people who are enjoying the pedestrian and shopping experience, rather than people who are looking for an extension of a place to sit and have their lunch, as might be in the back of the courtyard just to the south, where we see coffee and the other businesses there have created a dining dog park, recreational almost spot off of the street.
Commissioner Lane, can I just add something?
Sure.
So, Chair, if you look at the bottom right-hand corner, which is the southeast corner of the project, that faces across Chino to the Chicken Ranch, I think it's called, and more pedestrian activity. When we saw this in study session, I wanted, my request was that that corner be activated from a pedestrian entrance standpoint. And my understanding is that when we got the next submittal, it was a park, and it was requested by another staff member. And so I was surprised that they didn't have this type of resolution. They had an interim resolution where it was park up to Palm Canyon, and then we all, subcommittee and applicant, agreed that it would be better serving the public realm if there was a pedestrian entrance that's engaging the people walking from the south, walking towards the north.
Is
And
that cut out a pedestrian entrance?
yeah, you can see it. It's kind of small, and maybe Noriko can enlarge it, but you can see the door swings right there. Yep. No. Yeah, there you can see them better.
Okay. Yeah, you can see them.
Yeah, there they are.
And did you, as I look at it, is there shade on the street?
Well, it's on the east side of the building, so it'll be in shade in the afternoon. And I think also the screen sticks out in front of the glass a little bit, the upper level screen.
And Noriko, do we require palm trees on the street? Or do we allow shade trees?
I believe California farm is required along the street. I have to check with the general plan design guidelines to just confirm the information. But if that's something that's required, obviously it can be reviewed when the project goes to the ARC for review.
Okay. Are there other questions? I know I've asked a lot of questions, but mine were mainly parking park and consistency of this commission in terms of requirements that we make. We still have the environmental consultant to come forward. Are there other questions from the commission before we go to the environmental consultant? Seeing none, if the environmental consultant is here, and mainly if you can focus on the on what the findings were and what if any mitigations were required.
Certainly. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the Commission. I'm Anna Chaudhuri with the Altum Group, and we prepared the environmental CEQA document for this proposed project. The proposed project actually does not have that much impact, that many impacts, other than just to be on the safe side for biological cultural resources. Because this is a vacant lot, once you start digging, you just don't know what's underground. So that is what the main focus of our environmental document was, and that is what the mitigation addresses. The mitigation measures were developed by our sub-consultants, so they're very technical. Like if something were discovered, then all work would stop and they would have to notify the appropriate offices and all that, get buy-in before they can start work. So those are the two main sections of our mitigation. Other than that, the project had very little or no significant impacts for any of the other issue areas under CEQA.
Thank you. Any questions for the environmental consultant? Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
There being no other questions, the public hearing is open. The applicant has 10 minutes, and then members of the public will have 3 minutes, and the applicant will have 3 minutes for rebuttal. Is the applicant here? I see two
Yes.
hands up. If you just identify yourself and.
Yes, can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Great. First and foremost, just thank you very much for having us this evening. Looking back at our timeline, I think we were in front of you for a study session back in January 13th of 2021. Obviously, a lot of things have changed since then. And, one of the things I wanted to say with that is just, we truly appreciate the opportunity to be back in front of you. We especially appreciate the opportunity to work with the subcommittee over the last 2 months. We believe that, frankly, our project is better off now than it was beforehand with some of the changes that were made there. One of the things I heard a couple of comments about that I did want to address was the retail and the parking. If you look up and down the Uptown Shopping Center area, parking really is not provided other than standard street parking in front of a lot of those retail spaces, because it is much more of an urban environment for shopping. As one of the commissioners mentioned, we are also the owners, and Rios was the designer of what we call the El Paseo project with the Workshop Restaurant. And if you look at that, a lot of that parking is behind, and a lot of the tenants, or I'm sorry, a lot of the visitors of the shopping center do come along North Palm Canyon and kind of window shop through that area. We want to create something very similar to that here with this retail. The retail that we have now and the depth that we have now matches a lot of those small shop tenants that we do have in that shopping center. So we feel like it's going to be a great complement in the way that it flows now, with, again, a little bit larger spaces, a little bit deeper spaces per the subcommittee's comments, and a little bit more flexibility in just the size of those components now that we have a larger piece of retail on that front. So with that, again, just wanted to thank you all for this opportunity and the opportunity to work with the subcommittee on this.
Are you going to do a presentation, a design presentation?
Yes, we are. Would you like us to do that now with our 10 minutes?
Yes, please.
Great. All right. Elizabeth, could you pull that up? I don't know, Noriko, could you allow her to share her screen?
Of Danny sharing.
Oh, great. Excellent.
Yes, I'll see this.
Yes. Can you remove the hidden parts at the top?
So I do think that Noriko did a wonderful job explaining the process and the design that we have here. And we're not going to take a lot of time to go over a lot of the things she already addressed, but do just want to allow Elizabeth and their team to present a little bit of the changes that we've done, and then a little bit more detail and maybe some of the residences, how that's going to flow along with the retail piece as well. We have several renderings in this area that'll just show you a little bit more of the design and the feel for this project from around here. Just as a reminder, this is the team that we've assembled for this. We purchased this site in December of 2019. We really purchased it with kind of a vision, but no plan. And that vision was to really complement the Uptown area along North Palm Canyon with the historic and important nature of the old Las Palmas community to the west. And in doing that, we wanted to transition from a little bit higher density on the east side of the site to lower density on that south side. And with that, our local, real estate investor and advisor has been a longtime resident of that old Las Palmas community for a long time, Peter Mahler. And, with them bringing in the Rios team, again, they're the ones who assisted all of us in acquiring and redesigning the El Paseo Shopping Center. They've done great work for some of the other public projects there in Palm Springs as well. We thought they'd be a great team to add, or a great member to add to our team. So again, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Mark just for a minute to talk a little bit about kind of how he took that vision into a plan for us. And then from there, we'll allow Elizabeth to talk about a little bit more of the details on the plan.
Just really briefly, I've had the opportunity to present this a couple of times to many of you. I think we really want to make a very sensitive project that fits into Palm Springs, but at the same time becomes really a landmark for the community. And I think this is such a crucial site because it really links two different neighborhoods together. And so how it does that from the scale and pedestrian point of view is really important. And then how it links Palm Canyon to the old Las Palmas neighborhood and the mountains is another important fit. So trying to create a community that's very safe, it's walkable, it's very porous, it has a variety of sort of heights and masses that feel appropriate for the scale of the context. We're really trying to build on the architectural legacy of Palm Springs. And what's really interesting in this area, there are several really beautiful multifamily units that have been designed by some really good architects. And so I think we're really hoping to add to that collection of contemporary architecture that goes beyond sort of the single family residences, but really makes a community. And so we've thought really long and hard about what are the things about living in a more communal way, but also what are the things that are about living in a more private way and trying to combine those together. So looking at how we make a piece of architecture that really fits. Thinking again about urban design, about placemaking, about how it fits in the experience of moving along Palm Canyon, about the materiality so that it feels like intrinsically part of the place. I think, are really excited by the use of both stone and breeze block, and then basically plaster, and then our screens, that they all feel like the materials that fit with the city, but also have a contemporary take on the history as opposed to sort of recreating the history of the past. Finally, we're really trying to make a place that's very sustainable. And so we're looking at how the sun works on this property, how we create shade, how we create movement in shaded areas. We want to really make a place that's highly sustainable. Elizabeth, do you want to go through just sort of quickly the plans and sort of?
We'll be real quick. Yeah, thank you, Mark. So just jumping through here, I know there were some questions about clarifying what those setbacks and variances were. So you can see here in red, that is the only area that we are requesting a bit of an adjustment on that variance, and then, or on that setback rather. And then everywhere else in blue, we are within the requirements of the setbacks. I think we can jump on from this one. So here, again, we really want to thank the subcommittee for their thoughtful contributions. I think we all feel that the project has greatly improved, and that we're really happy with where it's developed to. So you can see in the pink shaded area, that's the old area of the retail, and then what we've expanded it to is this whole block here, with a break at this moment. The other changes that we made, we moved the gate back to here, added a lot of landscaping and tried to conceal it. And then actually on the next slide, you'll see that we also heard what you were saying about not wanting it to feel like a gated community. So there's actually all of these small garden gates so that these feel like townhomes, and you're going to get a lot of activation from pedestrians and the homeowners coming to and fro from their gardens. And then along the street, there's a lot of different entryways and transparency to that retail. So this just shows some of the unit mix. I know that was one of the questions. So on the ground floor, we have several units here of different types and different sizes, so that there's different family configurations that can live here and make their home here. On the second level, you jump to that, Danny, thanks. Above the parking, we have some 1-bedroom units, 1 and 2 bedroom units here. And then I just wanted to point out as well that, along Belardo, those are the 1-story units. And then along Chino, it's going to feel like there's 2-story broken up by 1-story massing there. So we're really looking at this transition of going from more commercial over here on Palm Canyon, and then having it really gracefully blend into the residential neighborhood there, so that it doesn't feel like this abrupt change. I think we can step on from here. So some project data, I think we're all familiar with this, and it's in your packets. Next. I just want to get to the pretty images, I think. So we've all looked at the site plan here. So in terms of the renderings, you'll see on this corner, so this is where we've increased up to the 30 feet, and we've really enhanced that retail with a lot of glazing, and it stretches all the way up to the north end of the site, where we have another 30-foot volume. So this is, again, as the subcommittee was pointing out, this is where we have those 2-story volumes at each end. And just, I'll erase my ugly sketches. So what you're going to see during the day is that these bookended volumes that are going to announce the site and kind of bring attention to it. But then at night, the reason that we're thinking of these screens, we want to have it feel like these lanterns that light up the area that really beautifully kind of respond to the different landscaping and the very local landscaping that we have, as well as blending into the neighborhood with some of those same features along Chino. Also here you can see, well, that's okay, we'll jump on. I'm running out of time here. So this is a view of the entryway in the motor court. So you can see that we're proposing for that gate that it feel transparent and there's a sort of visibility through it. So it's purely for those security reasons, and then to make the circulation a little bit more safe and not have that crisscrossing between commercial and residential circulation. Next. So here, this is along Chino. So just wanted to emphasize that we're gonna have these garden gates with these kind of smaller courtyard areas. And then there's this layer of planting that's gonna be happening along these walls. So we're gonna have a lot of landscaping and interest for the pedestrians coming along here. Next. So view of the interior motor court, the parking court. View towards the mountains. The pool, a lot of landscaping. And then here's a view from that northeast corner of the site. So again, we're really looking at increasing all of the transparency so that whoever the tenants may be, you know, we're looking at a mixture of like boutique crafts, artisan-like tenants. Whoever they may be, they'll have these great opportunities to share all of their wares and have an opportunity to really activate that space with a lot of light and color. Next. And so here's that lantern view that I was discussing before. So you're going to be able to see through the lantern a bit and some of that 2-story volume, and then it's just going to be lit up on the corners. You'll see that. I think the other comment, I know there's a question about the palms, and our understanding is that those really beautiful palms that are there are to remain. So we've kind of been responding to them and giving them enough breathing room to really, that's why we have an extra bit of setback that we've allotted for, so that they have the space to really be their majestic presence. Seeing if there's any other questions I haven't responded to. Yes, we've got the 12-foot clear retail there. You can kind of see the scale in there with the 2-story volumes on each end. Mark, did I miss anything about our plan?
One of the really important things is that we really want this to be engaged in the community. And so when I think of a walled kind of private community, it feels like it's really turning its back. And so I think by having multiple heights, by setting the walls forward and back, by having the landscaping, by having the penetration of the screens, all the garden entries around it, we're doing everything we possible to fit this into the community and the pedestrian experience. So it doesn't feel separate, it feels inclusive and it feels welcoming.
Are there other things in your presentation? I'll open it up to questions later, but if I want to let the public make comment, if there is public comment.
I'm Bob Eichholz. I think my hand
Hold
is...
on 1 second, Bob.
Okay.
Are you finished with your presentation? Okay, then the public comment is open. Thank you, Mr. Eichholz.
Sure. I'm Bob Eichholz. I own one of the larger historic Spanish properties behind this that's actually within the area for public comment. There was a circle and my house is in that circle, so I'm super interested in this. I love, first of all, I love what you've done, the fact that in the back, you've gone from 2 stories to 1 story to kind of mitigate the impact on our neighborhood. So I guess what I don't like is that there's really no reflection of the Spanish, that I see at this point, of the Spanish heritage of the homes that are behind this development. So I'm not asking you to redevelop, but I would have liked to have seen something that fits in a little better to the transition to the neighborhood. But overall, I like the building. Two comments. One is, in this photograph, I'm super happy to see that historical marker on the corner there. And I don't know if all of you have walked by this. We walk by it every night. It's extremely important to keep those. Those are some of the original, I don't know if you see it, it's kind of right at the corner of the building. That was put there in the 1920s. It's an entrance, one of the original entrances to the old Las Palmas neighborhood. So whatever you do, please don't touch that. And in fact, it would be neat to get a marking on it, designating it. There's also one at the other end of the property. So please, whatever you do, don't get rid of those. And the one other comment I have is the elevation that I haven't seen yet is kind of from the opposite point of view. And that's in the access road that we talked about, the dirt road that's to the side. It looks like it's just a big solid wall. And I don't know what that looks like because you haven't drawn it, but I'd be very interested to see that because that has the potential to be an eyesore. You can, as you walk by that area, you can actually see all the way through to Palm Canyon. So if something isn't done with it architecturally, it's just going to look like a big, long brick wall and a narrow passageway with dirt. So hopefully you can come up with something that makes that look as attractive as the rest of this. That's it for me.
Thank you. Are there other members of the public who wish to speak? Planning Director, are there any?
Yeah, Madam Chair, no other members signed up in advance, and there are no other members in the audience with their hands raised.
Thank you. Then I'm going to come back to the applicant. You have 3 minutes for rebuttal. And if you have a drawing of that other wall, it would be a great time to show it to us.
Unfortunately, we do not have a rendering or a drawing of that side yet. So, you know, generally speaking, appreciate the comments, and certainly our intention is to keep all of those monuments as they're shown. You know, in our drawings now, it's been very important to us to keep those historical markers. So very much appreciate the comments from the neighbor.
Yeah, and I think just to add, we're inspired by their materiality. So you can see that some of the stonework has been brought into the facade. We thought they're really quite cool, and they're like, you know, a reminder of the past of the area. In terms of the north facade, we intend it to be, you know, similarly variegated in terms of its massing and also expression. So we hope that we'll be addressing that comment adequately.
At this point, it's time for commissioners, if you have questions of the applicant before I close the public hearing, for you to ask them. I can't see your hands raised. So if you're a member of the commission and you have...
Peter Maruzzi. Just a clarification. I don't, you know, listening to the comment from the public, I don't think that you folks have any ability to landscape or do anything with that strip in between, right? Because that's county land.
Yeah, that's correct. We can't do anything inside of it. We can't touch it. We can't regrade it. We can't plant in it. However, we can certainly, against our property line, landscape that area, break up that elevation to create something that feels more than just what his concern, I think, is just kind of a very simplistic kind of corridor that goes through there. So touching it, no, we cannot do, but complementing it on our side, we certainly will.
Will versus can. So you have planned for that.
Yes, and as you can see just in the plan, you know, just a lot of accent landscaping around that area. And then there will be some small, you know, movements to that elevation as well in that area, just to break that up a little bit.
So I assume that the Architectural Review Committee will want to look at that, but because they look at landscaping and all. So thank you.
Correct.
Other Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, and I would just ask the applicant to confirm, or the staff, the 5-foot setback that we're being asked to approve along the north side will still allow for windows to be put in those second-story units that are facing that north easement. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
Are there other questions for the
Well,
applicant?
yeah, I just have a question. So I should know this because I've studied this project, but between the wall of the garage and the property line is landscaping, but is the wall along the property line?
So we have shorter segments of the wall, like here and here and here. So there's no, and then like the building itself is the wall essentially.
Okay, got it. So there is some opportunity to soften that edge with landscaping, which is great. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. The public hearing is closed, and the matter will be back before the planning commission for comments.
I think we should close the slide so we can see each other.
Great. Comments, Commissioner Hirschbein?
Yeah, well, first of all, my comment is I agree with the applicant that this project is improved. It specifically the commercial portion of it greatly since we first saw it and through the various iterations. And I want to thank him for being receptive to Planning Commission's comments and concerns. And I personally think it promises to be the best public building built in Palm Springs in quite a number of years. So thank you very much for your efforts. I'm ready to make a motion. I'd like to
Not ready for that yet. I still like comments.
Okay, well, my comment would be when we do make a motion that we include instruction to ARC to review that north facade and make sure that some of these concerns are addressed. Other than that, I don't have any issues with anything that's been presented and would agree with staff with the conditions that they've put together.
Other comments from the commission? I was troubled. Oh, Commissioner Marucci.
I'm very appreciative of the work that the committee did, especially meeting twice, and the results. I wasn't there on December 14th, but I do remember from I guess it was January of 21 21 when this was presented to us as a study session, and I think it's really come a long way and positively. So I feel comfortable, and also the issue of the gate, unlike another project that we approved where the applicant did not agree with our determination about the gate. This time, the applicant's actually presenting it as what they like. So I'm happy about that.
Other comments? Commissioner Miller?
Yeah, and regarding the gate issue, I would just like to make sure we are acknowledging the difference between this project and I think it was called 12 at Las Palmas project up north of here, where it was strictly a residential project. And we had a real concern because they were proposing the gate essentially right at the property line along the side street. And so this is very different. It's a mixed-use project, as we've talked about throughout this process, the need to separate the commercial and the residential traffic and to prohibit deliveries for the commercial from going into the residential. The fact that they've now set back the gate a full 85 or 86 feet back from the Belardo right-of-way line. I think this is a project that really allows us to support what is essentially a gate, because it really won't appear to be a gated community. And I think this is exactly the kind of compromise that needed to be made for this project and for that gate issue.
Commissioner Irvin, you had your hand up.
Yeah, so so usually I as well had I wouldn't say an issue, but a concern about the gate. But knowing that the subcommittee has met multiple times and put hours into looking at this and taking it into consideration, I just want to say thank you for the hard work that you guys put into the subcommittee and taking the time out to help to get us to this point. And I'm definitely excited about the more commercial. We wanted to definitely highlight that and enhance that. It seems like you guys kind of did that. So I guess, I can say that I'm okay with the adjustments and the things and the time that you guys have put into the project.
I have a couple of comments because I was concerned about the gates. And we had a city council review where two of the members felt that because we weren't cutting into the street grid and changing the street grid, that we might have been wrong in the RIV, and we were supported by 3 members. So this is that same kind of project where we haven't created a cut in the street grid, but we have created the security. I actually think the location, because of the heavy traffic, pedestrian traffic, potential of homeless traffic might also be a reason to allow the gate that we've allowed. In terms of the project, I was disappointed that it didn't come to us with a landscape plan, because I think that things should always come to us with a landscape plan so we can at least comment on it. I would like, when this goes to architectural review, that there be a look at the trees on the inside, that they really provide shade and that they're not all palm trees, and that we are creating interior shade, because we are going to have even hotter summers than we have now. The markers, I believe, should be marked. So there should be some kind of plaque on the markers, and it should go to AAC with a requirement that the north wall be variegated and well landscaped, so that it doesn't look just like a wall. With those things, I think this project is done. And I would take a motion from somebody for approval. Commissioner Hirschbein, you had a motion.
Yeah, I'd like to do that.
Second.
Well, there's a motion, but do we have conditions in the motion?
Well, the conditions are that we're asking ERC to review that north facade, or that north wall, if you want to call it a wall or a facade, landscaping and architectural enhancements to it. I don't know that they have any control over those markers. I think they're on public property. And as far as and then the staff conditions as well.
And do you accept a review of the landscape so that there are shade trees?
Well, I'd like to see some shade trees. I don't know what opportunity there is, but I'd like to see ARC take a look at it. I wouldn't put it as a requirement, because I don't know that sometimes we run into problems with clearances around buildings and so forth.
And pools. For the city, can they put markers on those?
So actually, the marker on the southeast corner at Chino has a historic marker on it already. I'm not clear on the other one, but I think that is something that, if you would like to discuss it in your conditions, direct staff to work through the Historic Site Preservation Board to work on that.
I'd be happy to add that.
And if I may, I'm sorry, Madam Chair.
Oh, go ahead.
There was one other clarification for consideration as you make your motion. There were the 2 engineering comments that were remnants of when they had the emergency access to Palm Canyon. We had recommended you remove. If you agree with that, I would ask that you add that to your motion as well.
Well, yeah, I agreed to all the staff recommendations, so I think that includes that.
And we had a second. Do you second those conditions, Commissioner?
Yes.
Would you like to call the roll, please? Joanne, are you here?
If Joanne is not here, I can do it. Just give me 1 second.
Joanne is here. She's muted. Unmute. Who needs to unmute? Thank you.
I'll just go ahead. Commissioner Hirschbein,
Yes.
Commissioner Alan,
Yes.
Commissioner Irvin,
Yes.
Commissioner Miller,
Yes.
Commissioner Maruzzi,
Yes.
and Chair Wormier.
Yes.
The motion has passed 6-0 with 1 absent.
Congratulations. to the
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Uh,
Appreciate it. Thank you so
please
much.
Good luck.
To the ground.
Thank you all very much.
We will definitely do that. Thank you so much.
Okay. Moving right along, we are at unfinished business. We have none. New business, we have none. Planning Commission reports, requests, and comments.
Just a quick one.
Yeah.
I don't recall, was the issue of the gate that we were talking about a few minutes ago on the last agenda for city council, or is it on tomorrow's agenda?
Last agenda for City Commission.
It was the last one?
Last one.
And were you explaining that, Kathy?
Yeah,
Chairman?
I can explain if that's okay, Chris.
If you want to go ahead and explain, or do you want me to?
I actually would like to. It was
Sure.
a 2-3 vote. 2 of the city councilors felt that the parcel itself did not interrupt the street grid, and therefore we didn't have to make a determination that we didn't have gates.
I don't understand what that means. I'm sorry. That didn't make sense to me.
Let me use an example. You could take Serena Park as an example where you have a large, I think that's not gated, but it's a large community and the streets don't go through, they stop. So you have a community that you've created that interrupts the city streets. And it has its interior streets, but you go through gates to access the community. They tended to read more the general plan concern about gates as a concern about those kinds of gates. The other 3 city councilors felt that the general plan, that they upheld our position on gates because of the general plan and because we couldn't make a finding that a gate was unusually necessary in that situation.
So in other words, they supported our decision?
They supported our decision, but it was 3-2. And the issue that it's kind of split around was whether or not we were looking at gates as something that interrupted the street grid, so that you had, for example, a community that crossed two streets. And you've got rid of the cross streets to create the community. I think there were 2 different views, and it was an interesting discussion.
Do you recall who voted which way?
Oh, yes. The majority vote was the Mayor Garner, City Councilor Holstedge, and City Councilor Bernstein voted in favor of upholding the Planning Commission determination, and City Councilor Middleton and hold on for a second.
Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein.
Mayor Pro Tem Bernstein voted to.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Councilmember DeHart, you're right.
Councilmember DeHart voted, and he was mainly concerned about I think 18 of the neighboring residents met with the applicant and decided to support their request for gates, feeling that would inhibit the traffic that came out of that project. So, and that was his district.
Interesting.
Yeah,
All right,
talk-
thank you very much.
So it's, I think it kind of opens up, or it could possibly open up the kinds of discussions we have about gated communities in the future.
Yeah, I think in addition to those items, there was, a discussion on the homeless issue, the unhoused issue, and I think differing perspectives on how we use urban design to solve that problem, which I thought was particularly interesting, and obviously something we're all sensitive to.
Right, and some of the members felt that Gates solved that problem, and others felt that urban design itself, the design itself and the building itself could solve that problem. So that it might enliven our discussions in the future.
Absolutely.
I have one request for the planning director, two actually, which would be, I would like to know what our standards are for vesting of projects that have gone through they've gotten their approvals and they've pulled their permits. But I'd like to know when the city determines they vest. And then I'd like to know which projects that have been approved have lost their approvals. My understanding is you have 2 years to activate a building permit, absent other conditions, and just where we stand on those two issues.
Absolutely. I can look into that and bring that back to a future meeting. So the question is, at what point does a project vest? And I know there's been, I think, some differences of opinion in different conversations I've had about that. So I think that's good to give clarity to everyone. And then the second question is, which projects have essentially lost their entitlements because they have not vested yet?
And if they've gone over, if they don't do anything, why do they hold on to it, kind of?
Okay, absolutely, I can bring that back.
And the other was just at some point when it's appropriate, Serena Park is a project that came to us maybe at least 2 years ago, that was supposed to be in construction within a year.
Longer ago than that.
Longer. I mean, it's very old. It's like 1914. Yeah, it's not 1914. But it feels like it's.
Feels like it.
108 years. But just where that stands, when it's appropriate, because I know that's something staff may be currently looking at.
Yeah, I'll bring a more full update on that. But for now, what I can say is we have continual conversations with them about meeting some of the maintenance agreements that they have made under their development agreement. In particular, sand control and trash control and encampment control and security. And so David Newell on our team is actually out there, I want to say every 3 weeks or so, meeting the team and going around the site, walking the full site, and working with them to make sure that they are complying with those obligations. So that is ongoing. In terms of what they are looking, to do for the broader development and sort of where they stand with the development agreement, those are active conversations internally with the city attorney's office. So I would want to bring that back at a future date once we have a bit more clarity.
And the other thing is, I think that gave the city some money to put into a preservation fund. And is there a point where they don't meet that, where they continue to pay those fees, or?
So there was I don't want to quote the numbers off the top of my head, but there was an amount of money that they were obligated to pay the city as part of the development agreement. They met one of the installments for that, and they have not met further installments, and that's part of the ongoing discussion, is to resolve that and work with them on that.
I'd just like quickly, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'd like just quickly to say that I'm very impressed with how Living Out has moved so rapidly on that very large project that we approved not that long ago. That's the kind of thing I'd like to see. And, we approve a major project, it goes back and forth for a few times, and then they start building. And the Desert H with DAP is moving forward quickly with their project too. So those are encouraging signs, at least for projects that are approved.
Yeah, I'm really impressed how quickly living out is going up. We were at the ribbon cutting not that long ago, and it's astonishing to see how much they've progressed.
Are we seeing a slowdown because of construction financing?
It's interesting. It's mixed. We're certainly hearing from people that they are expecting to run into those issues. I don't know that it's trickled down to us yet in terms of permitting or things like that. I think it's more conversational, but there's still a lot of interest in pursuing development in the city. I will say both commercial and residential. So we're hearing it, but it's not becoming apparent yet. And some of that is expected. There's always a bit of a lag there, but I think people are perhaps feeling a little more optimistic than they even did a couple months ago, but still concern out there that it will be more difficult and challenging to get financing.
Are there other questions? Commissioner Irvin?
Well, I don't have a question. I just kind of got a comment. I just wanted to make everyone aware, if they're not aware, that it's Black History Month. And I also wanted to let you know that if you guys have an opportunity, there's some great events that'll be going on in the city of Palm Springs. And if you have an opportunity, please go out and check out some of the events. They have a Palm Springs Art Museum on Thursday, on the 9th of February. They have some Black history exhibits that are available there at the museum, some curation with some of the local artists as well. On the 11th in Antigua Kitchen and Bar at 4 p.m. They have a sip and paint project that they have that's going to be available. Once again, on the 16th of February, there's another art exhibit there at the Palm Springs Art Museum. On the 18th, they'll have a basketball tournament there at the James O. Jesse Center at 10 a.m. They'll have another caravan of African American history through the city of Palm Springs on the 20th at 10 p.m. And the departure will start in Desert Highland. There's also going to be a mid-century concert with Keisha D that will be at the Hyatt. And that'll be on the 20th from 5 to 8 p.m. And then there'll be a Taste of Soul that will be in Desert Hot Springs. Well, they'll have different type of African-American food to eat on the 24th from 4:30 to 8 p.m. And then the parade will be on the 25th of February at 11 a.m. It's the town fair. The parade has been going on now for 36 years.
Charlie, is there a website that has all this? You're muted.
You might be muted.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, there's a website. The website is Palm Springs BlackHistory.org. And there's some great events that we have going on.
Thank you.
I've been to the parade and really enjoyed it, and I've heard that the caravan is excellent. That might be something that for this commission, it might be interesting for people to do that and get a sense of of our history, or a better sense of our history.
Yeah, you'll be quite surprised at a lot of the contributions of African Americans for our city. It's really cool. The other year they were having a little difficult with the antennas hooking to the cars. So hopefully they'll have something a little bit better. You can listen on your radio, and it's curated by Jarvis Crawford. So he'll walk you through as you're traveling through the city about different architect projects and different buildings that are African American influenced.
Oh, cool.
That's something I'm hoping I'm going to do. I hope somebody would like to join me. If anybody would like to, let me know. Any other questions? Planning director's report?
So Mr. Priest is going to give us an update on the Brown Act. And I know we had started this conversation at our last meeting, and we expect the emergency orders at the state and local level to expire at the end of this month. So I thought Jim could give us a little update on what that means for us, and then talk about what next month looks like.
Thank you, Mr. Hadwin. Madam Chair, members of the commission, good evening. Yeah, I just wanted to give you a really quick overview of some recent changes in the law amending the Brown Act concerning post-COVID public meeting life going forward. Just by way of background, I mean, the original Brown Act, everybody knows, you show up for the meeting in person. If you're not there, you're absent. That's the basic Brown Act. And then in the 90s, they developed a teleconferencing rule where you can teleconference into a meeting. And we've been working with that rule for over 20 years before COVID came along. And the special rules were that where the votes all had to be by roll call, which we largely do anyway. There had to be an interactive access medium, either a two-way telephone system, or as we do in more modern times now, Zoom, Teams, this internet-based access system. One of the key things, and we're going to talk about this a little bit, is you also had to identify where a member was teleconferencing from. So if you're at your aunt's place in Waukegan, you'd have to put that in the agenda. Copies of the agenda would have to be posted at that teleconferencing location, and then the teleconferencing location would have to be available to the public. While that could sometimes cause a few complications, in my experience, in most cases, it didn't cause many complications. Again, if you're at your aunt's place visiting and you want to teleconference in, even under the old rules from the 1990s, you'd identify the location of the agenda, you'd post the note, you post the agenda on your mom's front door, take a screenshot to show you did it, and who in Waukegan is going to show up for a Palm Springs Planning Commission meeting. So while the rules look technical, they weren't all that impractical even in those days. But then along comes COVID in 2020, 2021. And now, the other thing I'll mention is under the original teleconferencing rule, you still had to have a quorum of your board present at the live meeting. So 1, 2, 3 of your commissioners could teleconference in under the old teleconferencing rule. And that was still okay if you followed those rules. And then at least 4 of them showed up live at the actual meeting. So that's the original law. Then we had COVID come along. And the problem with COVID is you couldn't even get a quorum to show up live. Nobody was supposed to show up live. We were all supposed to to sequester and protect ourselves with COVID here. So AB 361 was passed, and that law authorized the current system we use, where everybody can appear by Zoom or some other interactive online platform, so the public can speak, everybody can provide input and comment there. This new law, AB 2449, preserves that COVID rule, but it preserves it also to say that these special rules only continue to apply as long as the statewide emergency is in effect. And as Mr. Hadwin mentioned, that statewide emergency for COVID will go away at the end of this month. So those COVID rules that let everybody Zoom in and nobody has to come in person to the meeting will be going away shortly. And 2449 gets into that. Now, while 2449 says that these COVID rules can go on until the end of this year, for practical purposes, it looks like it's not going to happen because, again, the statewide declaration of emergency is going to go away at the end of this month. So with that gone, we're going to be back to the default rule of be there in person or the old teleconferencing rule. But AB 2449 adds a couple additional exceptions. I will note that they're very technical. We're still, unpacking some of this, having internal discussions about what some of these terms mean. And I can tell you, too, that our office will be having a discussion with the city council shortly to get their input on what policy the city will be going forward following to implement 2449. So as 2449 is, you have your basic Brown Act, show up at the meeting. There's the original teleconferencing rule, it still exists. But then there are 2 additional exceptions where you don't have to post the agenda at where you're located. You don't have to identify the location of the agenda, and you don't have to make it available to the public. And those two exceptions are one, if there is an emergency circumstance, some sort of physical family medical emergency that prevents in-person attendance, or if there's just cause. And that's defined as child or family caregiving needs, contagious illness, physical or mental disability need, travel while on official public business. If you have either of those circumstances and you notify the city as soon as possible, 2449 would let you opt out of appearing at the meeting in person and appearing by Zoom or other interactive link. That would still be a requirement for anybody that doesn't show up at the meeting live, as they'd still have to be able to participate through an interactive link. So Zoom is going to be with us still if we start, using these exceptions. There's a lot of technicalities to them. You can only use the emergency and the just cause exceptions to stay away from live meetings for up to 3 months or 20% of your annual meetings. The just cause exception can only be used twice in a year. So there's a lot of complicating factors in using these new exceptions that would allow somebody to opt out of being in a meeting in person. And again, we're still kind of sussing out, figuring out how we'd be implementing these in the city of Palm Springs. That discussion is going to be happening with the council shortly. But I just wanted to make you aware these laws are out there. Again, the days of everybody participates by Zoom, those are going to be going away shortly, because the California declaration of statewide emergency for COVID is going to be going away shortly. And so we'll have these other options available to us. I can tell you a lot of agencies aren't even going to bother with these additional 2449 exceptions. They're just saying either show up at the meeting or we'll implement the old teleconferencing rules. Because like I said earlier, while there are certainly exceptions where you could have some awkward situations, in most cases, the public isn't going to show up where you're at, to insist on participating in the planning commission meeting because you're going to be out of town. You're going to be at a family's house or something like that. So those old rules will still be applicable. We'll have these two new exceptions for just cause and for emergency circumstances. And, we'll see how that works. I would urge the commissioners that if one of these circumstances does come up, where you do feel you need to opt out of the meeting and you'd rather not go through the original teleconferencing rules of posting and all that, let's talk and, we can make arrangements there. But again, before we get into any of the details of this, there's going to be a discussion with the city council and we'll see what kind of policy they want to set on it. And with that, thank you very much. Do you have any questions?
Commissioner Hirschman.
What about the public? Will they be able to call in comments, or will they have to come to the meeting?
If the meeting is now again, this is going to be part of the long-term policy to see where Palm Springs is going, whether you're just always going to have a hybrid situation of live meetings and Zoom participation. My understanding is that's likely where this is going to go. So that medium will be available to members of the public, as well as, again, any of you who happen to opt out because of illness or just cause an emergency, something like that. But my understanding is that it's going to stay hybrid. There will be that live and online interactive medium.
Yeah, our direction thus far has been to plan for a hybrid option, particularly for members of the public, so that we are kind of keeping the broadest, reach possible in letting people participate. So short of council changing that, when they discuss this later in the month, that is our intention, is to get that set up. I will say we had our first in-person hybrid architectural review committee meeting on Monday because they opted to return sooner than required by law, which was kind of a good test run for us. So we were all in one room. We had, a 360 camera on the table to capture all of us. And then we had Zoom up on the screen where people could sort of join and speak remotely. And it worked well.
I will let you know, members of the commission, that going forward, once the California state of emergency is finished and rescinded, there will no longer be legal options for everyone to participate online by Zoom. All of the exceptions I mentioned, either the old teleconferencing rule or this just cause and emergency exception, you still will have to have a quorum of the commission present in the jurisdiction, which means four of you typically will have to be present live. And then 1, 2, 3 commissioners may be able to opt out and participate remotely based on the circumstances. But what we're doing now under AB 361, that's going to be going away.
A question for you and for Director Hadwin. I think it's been advantageous to the applicants to be able to do Zoom, especially when they're in other cities. And that's one question of, will we allow applicants who are testifying before the commission to be remote?
I'm sorry. I think our intention is certainly to continue to allow that flexibility. It doesn't sound to me like there's anything in the law that would prevent that. It really is about the commission members themselves. And so again, I think barring any change in direction from the city council when they discuss this, we would certainly allow that flexibility. And like you're saying, we have, members of applicant teams who may be across the country, and rather than them flying in for the meeting, if we have that option and the commission is willing to accept that, then I would certainly say the department would as well.
Yes, I would say also, just to contribute an addition to what Mr. Hadwin had said, the Brown Act and these rules are chiefly concerned with where you guys are attending the meeting. And then as long as the public has an opportunity either in person or through an online medium to participate, that's fine. Applicants, on the other hand, that's really going to be their judgment call, how they want to do that. We've heard of some applicants where they're doing is they're having the local representative or maybe the president and the CEO personally attend the meeting live. And then, if you've got retained architects, engineers, where it may not be convenient to get the whole team into one room, you might have them appearing by Zoom to contribute to the applicant's testimony. But again, we're going to be working all this out in the coming months.
And this is not a personal issue because I live by myself, but if somebody has a partner who's immune compromised with still having, even though the COVID emergency is gone, is that something that would allow them to be remote for more than 20% of the meetings?
No. There is, again, an emergency circumstance is defined as a physical or family medical emergency. I don't know if being immunocompromised outside of an immediate medical emergency for your partner or your spouse, whether that would qualify. A child care or family caregiving need would certainly meet the definition of just cause, but there are pretty strict limitations on how often you can use that one. There's also a question, and I don't know if it would apply to a spouse or a partner, about possible ADA accommodation for members who perhaps some sort of disability, perhaps immunocompromised, where there would still be a concern about them even 3 months later attending meetings, and perhaps they need a little longer. But again, that tends to be more focused on the members' needs as opposed to the members' partners or spouses' needs. But this is something, again, we're going to be developing over time. The rules are kind of tricky, and sometimes with these it just takes a little working with it a while, and then we can figure out all the logistics there.
Then the other question is time. I know at some point the council was going to review whether it's changing all of the meetings to evening had made sense, and whether we got more public participation or less. And
right. I haven't heard that there's been any change in thinking on that at this point. I certainly rolled up comments that I received from you all, as well as the other boards and commissions that come through planning, and I'm sure other boards and commissions did as well for consideration. So that's still a conversation that's ongoing. I don't have an update on that at this point. I know Historic Preservation Board, for example, decided they wanted to stay in the evening, but might appreciate starting a little bit earlier at 5 o'clock just to sort of build in a buffer. So there's a few different ways that different boards and commissions want to cut it. And I'm just not clear on where the city council is on that yet.
I remember.
So all of that to say I'm sorry.
I remember that we used to share the same day with city council.
Oh,
Where we
really?
afternoon and they had the evenings. So that we had to leave at a time certain. But I'm assuming that we won't have those kinds of constraints.
Well, what's interesting is if we are all coming, there are many boards and commissions beyond even just the three that kind of undertake planning related items. And then there's the city council. We only have so many meeting spaces. So I don't know, I don't have the context from pre-COVID of how that was all worked out, but I can imagine it becomes a bit of a chess game and making sure we have a place to meet. So I know for us, we meet in the council chambers Wednesday nights. I don't see that being a problem, but I could see it being a problem for others. So that's a good point I hadn't thought of.
I think we did the sharing in the past when we were in the afternoons because of congestion in the council chambers.
Right. That makes sense. That's something to look into.
I assume that with our current commission, there's at least one member who has to meet in the evenings. Am I correct? That we couldn't change and not maintain the same mission that we have.
Right. But just building off of that a little bit, what I do think it means for us is we will sort of stay status quo for our February 22nd meeting and do that online in this format. But we will be planning to return in person for our March 6th meeting in the city council chambers here. So looking forward to seeing you all in person then.
It'll be fun.
Yeah. If Madam Chair, if I might, I only have sort of one or two other updates. If you want me to continue, I can, unless there's other questions. Just one other update. I think I had mentioned this at the last meeting that we were taking an urgency ordinance to the city council related to changes that were made at the state level for accessory dwelling units. So those changes took effect January 1st, which essentially meant that our ADU ordinance here in the city was not in effect for being not in compliance with state law. So we took that urgency ordinance to the city council at their last meeting and they did approve it. So we are once again compliant. The changes are, relatively minor. They are obviously moving the needle a little bit more to be more permissive to ADUs and to remove more barriers to the production of ADUs. The biggest sort of, zoning standard change that was made were increases in height. So I think the former ordinance had a maximum height limit of 16 feet. State law changed that to be 18 feet in most instances where close to a transit, within 500 feet of a transit stop or bus stop, and up to 25 feet in other instances, including multifamily buildings. So there were some height changes there. And then just some items around, local jurisdictions' obligations if they choose to deny a permit or push back on an ADU, having to list out the reasons why and allowing applicants the opportunity to remedy those issues to obtain an approval. So really restricting the ability to turn these things down. I don't know that that's necessarily been the experience here in Palm Springs. But we will, in any event, be working on a permanent ordinance and sort of looking at what else we might need to tinker to implement this effectively, or what other changes we may need to make our ordinance more effective based on our experience of the last couple of years. And so that will be coming back to the Planning Commission at some point this spring for discussion and input before we move it forward to the City Council. So we'll be looking for your input on that as we start to develop that.
Did setbacks change?
Not explicitly. There were some exceptions made for ADUs on multifamily lots and buildings. And so the way that I think the ordinance worked now was it allowed you to have up to 2 ADUs if you met certain setbacks, and I think it was 4 feet. The state law essentially eliminated that and said for an existing multifamily lot or building that is not able to make that setback, we are still obligated to allow it, and we cannot condition allowing that ADU on making changes to the building to accommodate the setback. So it's really making exception for existing lots and buildings. Yeah. And it's essentially limiting, one of the other things it did that's a little more administrative, but certainly has an effect, is really limiting the ability, if you're not meeting the required zoning standards, it's limiting our ability to say no to ADUs unless there's an immediate health or public safety risk. So again, if you're not meeting a setback or some other sort of zoning standard, there needs to be a really solid reason to not allow that ADU to move forward.
That's on existing building, on existing lots.
That's correct. Yeah. Yeah. So stay tuned. That's all I have.
Okay.
Oh, and just one other thing, just because we should start updating at every meeting. I think we have made some headway on our housing element. And so we are excited to be resubmitting that to HCD imminently for their mandatory review. We are going to make the request that they expedite that review so that we are coming into compliance with our requirements to have an approved housing element as quickly as possible. They do technically have 60 days to undertake that review, at which time we would bring it back for approval. So that is good. And that we have worked through some of their feedback and some of the issues that were kind of lingering there. So hopefully we'll have that done soon.
And does that take us out of the penalty? Submitting it takes us out of.
No, it needs to be actually approved by the city council and by HCD. Well, actually, I don't know if Jim's still on the call. I think there's some uncertainty if it has to be approved by HCD, but my understanding is that it does. In order to get out of builder's remedy, Jim, do you know?
Typically, yeah, the housing element has to be HCD approved and then ultimately signed off by the city council.
So that would happen first, the HCD approval, and then the city council?
Typically that's done, so you know you've got the HCD approval already assured by the time you take it to the city council.
Right. So the submission does not get us out of the situation, but once it comes back from HCD and we get it to council, it will.
And do people here all know what a builder's remedy is? So no one has questions. Okay.
Good. That's all my updates.
Thank you so much. With that, unless there are no more questions or comments, we're adjourned until 5:30, February 22nd, 2023, and it will still be on Zoom.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.